I just want to explore with you attention deficit hyperactivity. Great words. You're shaking your head. It doesn't sum up who you are. It doesn't sum up your difference, does it?
Whether it's the school system or whether it's at work, do we not want the best for everybody and out of everybody?
In ADHD, the D stands for disorder.
I would just change it to difference.
Talk to me about being an accountant with ADHD that's undiagnosed, because I have to say that's square peg round hole, isn't it?
Now I'm going to be saying things out loud that people have never heard before.
What would Amy Polly, expert in ADHD and mindfulness, but also gone through that lived experience, and we've looked at your school reports, what would be your key message for people that are in positions of authority that could hopefully make a difference?
And when people have that realisation in a corporate setting and they're given permission to try things in a different way, it always lands. I haven't had it not land. And the amount of people that come up to me and go, oh, I never thought about it like that, I'm going to give it a go.
Things like this. Let's get to the people that actually have some authority and change the optics on this. That's how we're going to do it.
Phil, Amy, I've been looking forward to this. Why are we all here?
Who's going to go first, me or you?
You.
Thanks for that. We met and we obviously, as stars aligned on can we make a difference in something. You've introduced me to Amy. I'll just talk about when you introduced me to Amy to get us into that space. Because you're always very present in conversation, always. It's a skill you have. And I was meeting with you and you weren't present and you were looking out the window.
Distracted.
And I said to you, what's going on? Because it's so unusual. Every time I've met you, you've been totally present. And you said, oh, Amy's here. Do you know Amy? I said, no, I've never met Amy. And then you took me outside, met you. Hi, this is Amy. Hi, do you do? This is Phil. Phil runs a company called ADHD 360. Do you remember what happened then?
I think I jumped on you and gave you a big cuddle.
and sort of said, you've changed my life. And we're here, I suspect, to talk about why that is and where we can take that forward. Yeah. And I think as an intro to answer your question, it was a game changer, wasn't it?
Yeah.
For both of us.
Yeah, and I love that because we've been trying to arrange to get together for weeks. I was running late filming, enjoying the conversation with you, start realising that Amy's behind you, and I'm already thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to get any time with Amy. And I'm then thinking, oh, they get on really well. And there's all sorts of things we could potentially do together. And then I was only with you guys for 5 minutes, right? But then to know what you guys have gone on to do since, and we'll kind of reverse engineer to the weekend just gone and so on. But how cool is that?
Yeah.
All aligned to try and make a difference, learn and influence stuff together.
Yeah.
Meant to be, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Amy, your key here is lived experience. You know, 3 of us talking about ADHD, you're the one that's ultimately got ADHD. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that journey and from your point of view.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed at the age of 37 in 2021. I didn't tell anybody for weeks. And
can I ask why?
Yeah, I think because it was actually a shock to me. If you think back to the beginning of 2021, the reason that I found out about ADHD is because I was really struggling with my postnatal anxiety, my little boy. And I'd got to the point after COVID where I just wasn't getting anything done. I was still in finance then, and I was just staring at a computer screen for 7 hours a day. And I'm very self-aware. I've been practicing mindfulness for a long time. I've done a lot of personal development, and I just knew that something wasn't right. It really wasn't right. So I started speaking to my GP at the beginning of 2021. It's probably even before that because the health workers were working with me with my anxiety. And on a call one day, I can't remember what I was probably blabbing on about because oversharing and telling her everything. She was so lovely, and I know not everybody gets this, by the way. She was an amazing GP. And she just said to me, Amy, I think you might have ADHD. I think we should look into this. And I just went, no, as if to say, what on earth are you talking about? That wasn't something, and I'd Googled everything, by the way. So I just, that never popped into my mind. And this was just before the social media boom around sharing ADHD. And so by the time we'd gone through that process and then I came to ADHD 360 and had my diagnosis, it was September 2021. And there was a lot more online about it at that point. And so I think the combination of me not knowing much about it, even though I had it, there was like some unpicking that I felt like I needed to do. I wanted to understand it. And then I think a little bit of wondering what people were going to say, because, you know, there was this whole thing with the media and social media saying, oh, like that, here we go again, not you as well sort of thing. So I guess that little bit of shame and apprehension. And I just knew nothing about it. It's a really weird situation to be in, to have been
needed to educate yourself
diagnosed with something.
and get comfortable with it to then be able to talk to other people about it. Do you see that a lot with ADHD 360?
We do see it a lot. And you know, going back to what's this all about? Why are we here? You used the word that we used earlier today, that you know, the fear of the shame of that. And how sad is that? You know, how ridiculously sad is it that somebody so magnificent as you was frightened to tell people that you were different for fear of that? And that's the mission. That's the goal, isn't it? That is so that the next Amy doesn't fear that, actually has the validation and understanding, and actually doesn't say, I can't tell anyone. Because I don't know what was going on for you in the period between diagnosis and admitting it to yourself and telling people. That kind of helped your anxiety.
No, it was do you know what? Oh God, there's so many things are going on at that point in time. You're going through a sense of, it's almost like a grief, because of you're questioning, well, if this is real and this is true, how different could things have maybe been? Then you're going through that, and I'm a confident person in general. I'm sure you can tell, you know me. But in that moment, I felt really shy, and I hadn't felt shy for a long time about talking about it. But then there's also this enlightenment and this feeling of, oh wow, there's an answer to something, and this is something I can learn about and look into and help myself. So it was a real confusing time, really confusing. But I'm glad that I didn't take too long to share it, because then that's when family and friends who love you want to help you to understand, and they will listen, and then you can start to unpick things.
Family support is key. But the education piece, so from being diagnosed to then trying to understand it, what did you do? What did you read? What did you listen to? Where did you go? So just consuming.
Everything and anything. It was a hyper-focus.
And is the information out there, is it fit for purpose? Is there anything you recommend that really helped you? Because there's so much information out there. Where did you go that really helped you?
No, I think one thing I will say about the social media stuff is this. It's very necessary, because a lot of people don't have somewhere to go or don't know where to go. And if I think about young girls and women, I want them to have the knowledge and understanding, because I don't want them to get to the point in their 30s like me, where you're having a child and the hormonal changes quite obviously impact ADHD symptoms. It was debilitating for me. I couldn't leave the house for a period of time. So I want our younger generation to have this information and understand it and know about it. But there is also some real crap online that even when I watch it as an ADHD, sometimes you think, I'm not so sure about that. But I guess the thing is, when you first start to look into it, you have to find organisations. I mean, yours was one of the first that I came across, because my GP mentioned you. So actually you have resources online, don't you? Yeah, we do. And so I started to read. And then there's some creators that I had more of an affinity with, that felt like they were more educational rather than, I mean, I love a meme, but rather than just the memes, and there was more education around it. So I just started to listen, I started to read, and then I started to, I guess, be more self-aware and start to join some of the dots together. Does that make sense?
100%. And was there anyone in particular that was in the public eye that, for whatever reason, you were able to sort of look at, that gave you information from the lived experience in the same way that you are out there now as someone that promotes, that sort of awareness, funfulness, all the things we'll come to? But was there anyone that you remember was like, actually, I can identify with that?
I don't remember anybody at that early stage of my journey, because I feel like I was very inward with everything, and it took me a long time to find those people that I trusted. But I'll tell you who. Obviously, then Jack came along, and Ellie Middleton, Leanne Maskell.
So this is all recent.
They were people that I would watch. I can't actually think of anybody before that time.
But perhaps you didn't have that reference point, and it's the association to the reference point, that validation point. If I may, let's go back in time a bit in your story, if we can, because obviously where you get to and what you're doing now is amazing, simply amazing. And I saw you in action at the weekend with us at our academy, and you blew my mind.
Thank you.
Let's go back in time, and I've got something under the table here to share with you, because one of the things that we've talked about, and we've talked about separate conversations, is how many things are missed that could have been captured, that could have got you on that journey earlier. And if you look back now, do you think, and you talked about the grief that you feel about what could have been, you mentioned that. Do you look back and think this diagnosis could have come a lot earlier?
Yes.
Okay, closed question, closed answer. So what was the impact of that on you when you had that realisation?
Do you know what? Everybody's different, and you know, because you've heard me talk about this before, our environment and our experiences can greatly impact how ADHD manifests for us and how it can impact our life. So in terms of education, I was middling. So I was always sort of hitting those C grades. With a bit more effort, I got the B grades, and I know I'm not stupid. I'm a clever person, but I knew that I couldn't always apply myself. Things didn't always stick, and I wasn't achieving what I should have achieved, and I could feel that. But I also felt like, well, no one's really noticing, so I'll just carry on doing what I'm doing because I'm all good. And I think that when you're achieving what your school sort of expects, they don't really care because you're on a tick box. Their grades are going to be okay, aren't they? If I was doing worse, then someone would have been there noticing and doing something. So I was middling with that. That wasn't too bad. And like my family is so tight and amazing that I always had that. I always felt good. But for me, it's the relationships. It's the emotional dysregulation. It's the romantic relationships that have been really difficult. It's the friendships that I haven't got from when I was younger. I'm so grateful I had such a loving, supporting family. I would have achieved better at school, but I was determined to qualify as an accountant. So even though that was painful sometimes, because you know what the first thing my mum said to me when I told her, apart from, no, bless her heart, she's totally on board now. Yeah. But initially she was like, no, really, you've done so well. That was what she said. You've done so well. I have done so well, but behind the scenes... You've
had to work really hard.
Yeah.
When we were at the weekend, when I was talking about the story of the telephone call I took in the car, and I had my son Archie in the car with me making notes, because that's at the start of the business entrepreneurially. It's all day, every day, wherever you are, and he would take notes if the phone went. And a young lady said, I'm an A-grade conversationalist about the subject, but I'm a C-grade in my exams on the subject. And as I was walking that through the room of trainee clinicians, I caught your eye, and I couldn't honestly tell whether you were going to burst out laughing with joy or you were going to cry, because it was very clearly landing with you, that wasn't it? And you've intimated that. So you haven't seen these. I've seen these.
I've been looking forward to this.
This is absolute gold. There have been some signs. These are your school reports which you kindly gave me. We talked about it at the weekend. There are some signs of improvement in Amy's attitude to work this year, but it needs to be more consistent. Her homework is often late, so she must improve her organisation. This is just, and you've been absent six times. This is absolute
lively though.
Lively, yeah. Diagnostic gold. Hasty in judgment or expression of her views, rather than taking additional time to think about how best to present her opinion. This could be a straight lift from the diagnostic manual if the diagnostic manual was written properly. And the point of labouring through these, I'll pull out, there was, her learning has not always been thorough enough, and this affects the accuracy of her written work. And I don't know what age you were for these school reports, but what they're saying is
12 and 13.
12 and 13. And it goes till 37, and you know it's my hope, and I know you share that hope, that there'll be girls of 12 or 13 thinking, I've got those in my school reports. This is validating my struggle, and I could be. Yeah, you are successful, incredibly successful, but you've had to work really, really hard, and harder than you should have to get there. And I remember when we first talked, there was so much going on at the academy at the weekend that. It was affirmation, and you were brilliant to have in front of me, because I'd be talking about something deep, scientific, meaningful, and Amy would go, yep, that's me, yep, that's me, yep, that's me. And for the clinicians in the room, having you around, as people listening to this episode, the incredible validation of you can succeed, you will succeed, but we can help earlier, is what we're trying to achieve here, isn't it?
Oh,
You know,
massively.
and this brings it all to life.
Shouldn't this be brought straight into the education curriculum as a test, as a diagnosis to then? Because I don't know about you, but something I've talked about with Phil previously is in ADHD, the D stands for disorder, which is a negative association. So the minute you're even sort of taking a test, you might find that, I wonder if I've got this disorder. And you actually, when you understand it and you embrace it and you work with it, it can be a superpower, which is clearly what you're doing every hour of every day.
I mean, I'd just like to say some days it feels like a superpower and some days it feels like a disability. It depends. But
It's harnessing it though,
yeah,
right?
and do you know what? If they had to keep the letter D, I would just change it to difference. Because that's all. It's not a disorder.
Well, that was what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
I mean, and across the board of ADHD, would you, if you kept the first three initials, then fine. But would you rename it and relabel it completely?
Well, you could
and if
call
so, what would you call it?
Yeah, difference. Because the thing is, I think that's we keep talking about the weekend because I mean it was so impactful for me. I learned so much, and it was wonderful to see the people that are going to be out there supporting others like I've been supported. But we had an exercise where we had to pitch ADHD to somebody, like an elevator pitch. So we had to sort of summarise it. And the first sentence that we came up with, and so I'm someone who has ADHD and then these people who are training, and our first sentence was ADHD is a difference, but it's different. Because it's a difference, but it's different for everybody because it depends on your experiences. And different, that's the word for me that I always come back to. It's just a difference and that's it.
When you were talking earlier, just staying on that theme, you talked about your emotional dysregulation a little bit. You alluded to that, and I just want to explore with you like, attention deficit hyperactivity. Great words. You're shaking your head. It doesn't sum up who you are. It doesn't sum up your difference, does it? Emotional dysregulation, sensitivity to negative feedback, rejection. I find they're the things that matter, yet they're not in the manual. Where were you with not understanding what was going on for yourself prior to picking all this up in your world?
Oh, 100%. I mean, like you say, just to really come back to that attention. I have great attention for things that I enjoy, and I've quite obviously shown that I can pay attention to things because I've achieved certain things. And it's the hyperactivity. Yes, if you look at those school reports, lively is the word. And I mean, you know me, I am very energetic, but I can also be very not energetic. And so, all of those things that you're talking about, I had no idea. The best way I can describe it is this. I always felt different. Like growing up, I felt like I never fit in. But I had no idea that nobody else was sitting in their bedroom unpicking the interactions that they'd had with people and wondering why they're now sitting there crying or feeling angry.
Yeah.
I thought everybody did that. I thought that everybody was thinking about something else whilst they're watching a film. I didn't realise that I had such an active mind. I didn't realise that the arguments and the relationships that had ended, often not in a nice way in terms of romance, was something that I maybe could have helped. I just thought that's the way I was. And so when you talk about things like emotional dysregulation, procrastination, rejection sensitivity, they're not things that are in ADHD, but they're the things that have impacted my life the most.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. And as you were talking there, we've all talked, when you get to the position of understanding why you're different. We talk about that being a seminal moment in the patient's life, don't we? And that validating time. And how validated did you feel when you received your diagnosis? And I ask you that question deliberately because there's a lot of people say, oh, everyone's got this these days, everyone's getting it. But real people with real ADHD, if you don't have that validation, there's something missing. What did validation give you?
This is I was just saying to John earlier, I felt more emotional about the diagnosis recently than I ever have done, I think, because I've done so much work on understanding everything. I'm going to try not to cry. The fact that I can now recognise that I might be emotionally dysregulated and manage that and have people around me that understand that, and therefore that doesn't hit the fan in my relationships, or the fact that when I have sat there and I've been meaning to do my business development for my work, and it's 5 hours later and I just haven't got off the starting blocks, I have real compassion for myself. And now I can talk to my mum about the way that I'm feeling through the lens of ADHD, which really helps us to understand what's going on and therefore what I need. I mean, it's not just validating, it's literally life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel so much more content. It doesn't mean that I don't feel really upset some days and I'm still really hard on myself and it still bloody annoys me, but it has literally changed my life.
You've been able to marinate in it for a length of time now to
It's took me a while.
No, I get it, but that's an education piece, that's a maturity. And you can feel that, it resonates from you, that you are, without any arrogance, you're sort of comfortable in who you are. And then going back to that sort of the fun side of you, if you like, you know, there's a passion that ripples through that you want to share that. You know, was that, because I only know you as Amy Funfulness, just super positive. Were you struggling to channel that pre-diagnosis? So even though you might have had this high level of energy and bursts, but it wasn't channeled, it didn't have a purpose. So did that get a bit muddled?
I think when I was an accountant, it was different because that wasn't something that I was passionate about. But ever since I found mindfulness, ever since I started teaching and sharing that with people, that's the bit where it starts to be channeled. So that's been happening for quite a while now, but I still don't understand how come I was doing this thing. I think I said it at the weekend, I just want to do my thing. I want to teach, I want to speak, I want to help people, but then I have to do the paperwork. And I never thought about that bit when I started a business. And that's the bit that I still struggle with, and I kick myself and I miss appointments and all of that sort of stuff. So it's not always easy, but I feel like such a big part of the ADHD experience is finding the things that matter to you or that you're passionate about or that you enjoy or you can get stuck into, because it makes such a difference with how you can sort of attack that, whether it's a job or a relationship or whatever. Does that make sense?
Talk to me about being an accountant with ADHD that's undiagnosed, because I have to say that's square peg round hole, isn't it?
Now I'm going to be saying things out loud that people have never heard before. So, imagine being an accountant and you have to make sure that accounts are filed by a certain deadline. When people say that you work well under pressure as an ADHDer, that could not be more true. I have to have a deadline. So, I can't believe I'm saying this. I used to be in the office those deadline weeks until 10 o'clock at night and nobody knew about it. So all everybody would see is when I'm coming to a meeting and presenting the information, everyone's like, oh my goodness, Amy, you're amazing. Like everything's done perfectly well. This is the bit that I'm talking about. Nobody knew that I was in the office till 10 o'clock at night. Nobody knew that when I was studying for my exams, I was awake until 1 in the morning, because if I stayed awake till 1, I only had a short period of time to sleep, and then I could remember all that stuff to go and sit and do my exam. Ask me something when I come out the door after the exam, not a clue, but I could pass the exam. Yeah. And so being an accountant, you have to remember though, I had a bee in my bonnet that I was going to qualify as an accountant. So that's what I was aiming for. It was the exams and qualifying as an accountant. Also, I do have my own personality. That's why if you've met one person with ADHD, you met one person with ADHD. I would never let anyone down. Like that is a big part, because I don't want to be rejected, I guess. I don't want someone to say that I'm crap. But I felt like I did a good job because it was pressured, there were deadlines, and I didn't want to let anyone down. But my goodness, were there days when I was nearly falling asleep at my... Do you know one other thing that I did? Sorry, see, it's going now. When I started to learn about mindfulness and meditation, and I did a course in crystal healing, I signed up to a diploma. And because I had fixed everything at my accountancy role, so I was financial accountant for a company, and I fixed all the system. That was really good. When I went there, I had to fix some systems and stuff. That was all done. So then my everyday was sort of like, I just had these little, I had to do these bits every day. So I used to have my mindfulness or meditation diploma underneath my keyboard, and I'd be answering calls, doing bits of my accountancy work, and I'd be studying my mindfulness and filling out my my homework and my coursework for my mindfulness and my meditation. Now, I mean, if that's not ADHD, I don't know what it is, because I needed that little bit of both to keep me going.
So you've mentioned mindfulness a number of times. Mm-hmm. We've talked about your ADHD. Bring ADHD and mindfulness together and talk to me about mindfulness, talk to us about mindfulness in the context of ADHD. Because I know your view of mindfulness is not what some people who aren't educated in it will. And I think there's an important message of the correlation between your version of mindfulness and mindfulness for an ADHD person?
Okay, I'm going to try not to swear because I get very passionate about this. So, mindfulness has been around for thousands of years, and it was brought to the West by John Kabat-Zinn in the 70s. It's amazing. It's been around for a long time. There is a lot of research into it. The science says, when you talk about ADHD, in which you talked about when I was at the academy, the prefrontal cortex of the brain, mindfulness engages the prefrontal cortex. It can help you create new connections between that back part of your brain and that front part, the prefrontal cortex. So we understand from a scientific point of view why mindfulness and meditation would be good for an ADHDer. You say to an ADHDer, we're going to practice mindfulness, they will run away. They will shake their head at you. If you say that we're going to do meditation, they'll be like, oh, I can't do it. And that's because we've been educated the same way by the same types of people. And I'm not being rude because I'm totally here for all the hippiness, because I am one. But if I want to meet people where they are and actually help people, we have to think about it in another way. You can't expect people to sit there for 20 minutes in silence when they've got a busy brain. It's just BS. So we have to make it accessible and inclusive. We have to turn that into what I call funfulness. You have to make it engaging. You have to make it fun and playful. And that's what I sort of did for myself. So I've never taught mindfulness from a textbook. I created my own program, and I incorporate things like Dobble. Have you played Dobble?
Yeah, my kids have got that.
It's brilliant.
Matching,
we'll play later because I
cards.
always have one in my bag.
Right.
And things like just playing beanbags into hoops when we're practicing mindfulness. You have to make it more active, and it's just not being taught that way. And why can't I have high energy and be a mindfulness teacher? Why can't I swear and be a mindfulness teacher? Why can't I have ADHD and be a mindfulness teacher? You can. It's just that people are going around saying, when you are present, there are no problems, only peace. And it's just, it's not about that. It's a brain training. It's a brain training. It's not about being calm.
You go to schools,
Yeah.
and I know the reception you get from the pupils is immense.
Yeah.
They probably think you're awesome.
They love
What
it.
about in adults, where, just listening to you then and throwing, you might do that at a Christmas party and stuff, but in context of bringing that into every day, where I imagine adults would respond really well to the playfulness, funfulness side of things, right? Because life gets so serious,
Yeah.
and especially if you're struggling with your ADHD.
Yeah.
Have you had those conversations almost in a corporate environment and broken down that the barrier and the stigma of that?
Yeah, 100%.
Brilliant.
I take those things with me to the corporate, the talks and the stuff that I do. And the thing is, when I start to explain what mindfulness is, I mean, we haven't got all the time today, but when I start to explain what it is, that it means awareness, that you already practice it. That's one of the big things as well. People don't realise that they already practice mindfulness, because it'll be something that you already do. If you're a foodie, it'll be when you're eating your favourite food, or you're going to the gym, or whatever it is. And when people have that realisation in a corporate setting, and they're given permission to try things in a different way, it always lands. I haven't had it not land. And the amount of people that come up to me and go, oh, I never thought about it like that. I'm going to give it a go.
I was talking to a colleague of mine, Nick Hollis, who I've talked to you about him previously. He's a professional explorer and adventurer. He's an incredible man, a phenomenal man. And I was talking about you to him. I said, oh, Phil, that's my mindfulness is walking to the South Pole. And you think, well, that's an extreme. or rowing across the Atlantic on his own. But the build-up, the kind of 6 months build-up to that is him in a mindfulness space prepping, executing it, and then achieving it. And it's an extreme.
Is he ADHD?
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. But that's his mindfulness. And that was, and it got really animated when I talked about your perspective of mindfulness, because you are magnificently breaking down barriers of people's understanding, and you're doing it for a part of our community who are a bit lost with how to find their space, how to find their time, how to find their tribe and be themselves. And I think that you've got a sweet spot of your definition, and mindfulness being funfulness is a whole different, isn't it? So and you think about in the workplace, and you've got me thinking about in the workplace, and I've got about a third of our office staff are neurodiverse. What am I doing for their funfulness? Bugger all. What should I do? I should get you in to come and actually do some negotiation with us all about what we could do, and we'll do that.
Yeah.
We'll do that. And
do they have takeaways from that? So you go in to say, feels business, and then these people get enlightened, they see things differently. Are they then able to begin practices and habits that form that allow them to...
it will be bespoke for everyone and whatever you want. But what you have to think about is this: I'm trying to help you to create a new habit. And the thing is, when you actually stop and reflect, and I was talking about this last week when I was doing a keynote speech, you are capable. I'm talking to capable people here, but people go, oh no, I can't do mindfulness. You're very capable. ADHD is very capable. It's just you've not quite got the understanding of it, but you can create a new habit. But it can start with something as simple as brushing your teeth. And I know that's not funfulness, we bring that element in as well, but you've just got to keep it simple. You've got to meet people where they are and get them on that journey. And then they'll start noticing things and start realising a different, and then that keeps them going. You've got to practice over a number of weeks if you can. That's why I always give people homework. And can I just say one more thing before we move, if we do move off the subject? I've been practicing mindfulness for 13 years. So I think one of the big reasons that, even though I had all of those mixed up emotions when I had my diagnosis, and it's affected so many things in my life, and there's so much happened even since then. I think the fact that I've been practicing mindfulness and I've been through such self-awareness and that personal development journey, I actually had a way to support myself through that a little bit already. And I think because of that, that's why I'm so passionate. I found something that really works. And I found something that it's not the only thing, but as part of a toolbox of things to help you, this is one of the few things that you can actually teach someone and they will always have. And because it's helped me so much and I've watched it help so many people, I am just passionate about sharing that. Like, I want other people to have it. It's like having you finding out you've got a new fruit and you're eating this fruit and you never share it with anyone. Like you just can't do it. You want to share it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I can feel that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's the biggest take home you would give anybody who's thinking about that they may have ADHD? And I'm going to ask a supplementary question if I may, but that's the easy question. What would you say to encourage the next 13 or 14-year-old young girl who's hearing this and thinking, wow, that Amy Polly, she's inspired me? What would you say to them? But there is a follow-up question coming.
I would say try to be brave in having a conversation, but also sit with it for yourself for just a minute and think about what you want to do from this point forwards. Who do you want to speak to? Think about the people in your life that might be able to support you. Maybe some people might not have that person, because that's the other thing going into schools. I get to learn about lots of different children's circumstances. But one of the beautiful things we have nowadays is the internet. So, you can start to go and self-educate a little bit. But my first thing is, be brave, don't be shy. There's nothing to be shy about. I've learnt that, later in my life. There's nothing wrong with you. You are amazing, but you just might need a little bit of help along the way. So don't be shy in asking for help.
No, that's brilliant. And that links back to that whole shame piece as well, doesn't it? The second question is, teachers, educators, people who commission health services, government. Yeah, I know, you sat back in your chair. What would Amy Polly, expert in ADHD and mindfulness, but also gone through that lived experience, and we've looked at your school reports and the opportunities missed, but not just focusing on school, what would be your key message for people that are in positions of authority that could hopefully make a difference?
What is stopping you from doing things differently? And I know in a lot of situations hands are tied. However, whether it's the school system or whether it's at work, do we not want the best for everybody and out of everybody? So if it means letting a child have a silent fidget aid, why wouldn't you allow that to happen? There's way more benefit. The benefits outweigh. Do you see what I mean?
Because it's one size fits all at the moment, is what education systems trying to do.
Same in a lot of workplaces as well.
Yeah.
You're expected to sit here and do this thing in this way. Now, unless you're on a factory conveyor belt line and you have to, why? Don't we want the best out of everybody? I just don't get why you wouldn't make those accommodations, why you wouldn't allow a child to learn in the way they need to learn. Now, of course, we can't have disrupting, I get it, 29 children for the sake of one to learn. But actually, knowing children that are neurodivergent and being one myself and having one in my family, etc., very small adjustments and accommodations can make a huge impact on someone's life.
This affects the education curriculum and system, but it also affects the whole kind of workforce and life. Even going back to the prison stats and people falling outside of what is conforming to acceptable and normal. Absolutely. If you go outside of that, some of those people are committing crimes that they really potentially wouldn't if they had been diagnosed 100%. And helped with. So what? And this is just an open question conversation. If it's the teachers and the bosses that ultimately could change, it feels like a whole thing needs to shift as far as the actual education side of things to then have implementations. What are they? What needs to come in to be able to then feed that down that one size does not fit all?
I think what we've got to stop doing is asking the same people who have the same thought processes to come up with a new solution. That's broken. All we're going to get is the same. So if we go back to the same educators who've built this system and say, build a system, they're not going to do it. If we go back to the legislators, the prison governors, what we've got to actually do is get the likes of Wes Street Inc. in a room with people like Amy to actually get that core understanding so that we can actually affect change from the top. We're not going to do it by writing papers and publishing notes. We're going to do it by actually getting these damn people in a room and saying, you have to listen. And you have to listen because look for their buzzwords, look for what's turning them on. ADHD is costing this country a chuffing fortune that doesn't have to be spent, both in terms of people's emotions, people's unspent capabilities, people not achieving what they could achieve, life expectancy being shorter, and so on and so on. And yet here we have one of many, if I may, but a standout of somebody who has absolutely nailed it in life, but it was at the age of 37. If that was at the age of 12 or 13, I would hope that you would be no different, because what you are now is perfect. But you've had all of those struggles and all of those hardships. That's not right. And I think it's by exposing the TV series like this, but things like this, let's get to the people that actually have some authority and change the optics on this. That's how we're going to do it.
I get that, because there's countless people, and I hate to say this, but it's the reality, that haven't made it through to Amy's kind of path, if you like. They've given up. They've hidden under a rock, and whatever that means. But that's also then impacting the NHS, is impacting potentially the prison side of things.
Education system.
Which again costs a lot of money and causes a huge amount of stress for not just the people that are affected, but those around them. And so actually it's a win-win for me to get the education piece right. Absolutely. Implement changes that allow the mindfulness to come in, understanding of education piece. And then workforces are better output, education, kids are coming through understanding themselves from a young age that allows them to flourish. Why does that not make sense?
There's no reason not to do this, is there?
No.
There's no reason not to do it. In a room over the weekend, you and 12 clinicians learning how to be an ADHD specialist clinician. Every time you spoke, you had the meeting at the palm of your hand, because you spoke about your struggles, your challenges.
It's authentic.
100%. And I actually think a lot of clinical people, never mind the policymakers, don't have that exposure. When you're performing medicine onto people, you're not getting that to that position where you can actually not only have empathy but demonstrate empathy. We worked a lot on that at the weekend, didn't we?
Yeah, and can I just say that is one of the biggest things. We're talking about school systems, we're talking about workplaces, and I was in a room with people that are going to be supporting others with ADHD, and the word that we kept coming back to, and the thing that we are talking about, is empathy. It is empathy. Why would you change something in that classroom? Because you care. Yeah. That's it. It is really as simple as that.
And having empathy...
That's a good enough reason, right?
Yeah, it is. Having empathy is part of the answer. Demonstrating your empathy is where we start to make a difference. And that's the champion piece. Is not, you claim you're a school teacher, justice minister, whatever. Yeah, well, I understand, I empathise, blah, blah. Bloody do something about it. That's where we make the difference.
Especially when you can demonstrate that the results will actually save money, improve lives and those around them, and ultimately allow people to flourish that, dare I say, are not living a life they could right now. Is that fair to say?
Let's have a system that makes people happy.
So what can we hope to achieve from this conversation? Wes Streeting was mentioned. That's government level. What and who needs to ultimately be impacted and affected that we can reach and influence?
There'll be you talk about the women's agenda a lot. Well, we've got the most women in government that we've had for a long time, and young women in government for a long time. Let's see if we can get this message out to them. Let's get them to talk to Wes Streeting. Let's get them talking in those corridors of power, and let's get together see if we can use the medium of the media to actually bring about. We're not with placards, we're not walking on Downing Street, but figuratively, that's what we could be doing, is saying there's a conversation to be had. What's the next conversation? How do we get to the ultimate conversation to bring about a demonstration of empathy? That's where we need to get to.
And that aligns us on a mission, right?
It does.
That's it. That's
It
brought
does.
us together.
And you've created a powerful platform here. And I was going to say to you, if I interview you as poacher turned gamekeeper, what's your takeaway so far? What have you learned so far about where we are?
Yeah, it's interesting. You've got lived experience and then you've got a purposeful entrepreneur that's trying to solve a problem. And for me, if you want me to be totally honest, I'm always looking at where there's a problem. How can I help solve it? How can I use whatever skill sets I've got, which is bringing people together, building a tribe that then can ultimately have an impact. And part of me is crying out as to why is this still not being dealt with? You've got lived experience. You've got someone that can say, if I was diagnosed younger, I could have done things differently. That relates to my daughters right now, 13 and 15, and countless other kids growing up that could be lost, going into a system where they might not conform and therefore get into trouble for it. Amy's report, classic example, makes me wonder whether I've got ADHD, being honest, because how I channel my own hyperactivity has always been a challenge to me. But I think probably answering a question with that, putting my purpose, putting my energy into things that I believe in, being around authentic people that are trying to make a difference that will positively impact other people's lives, that's what's brought us together. I'm now thinking about, hence the question, how can we, where do we go with this? Because it just seems, I'm going to use the word obvious without being arrogant. It's like you can see this would have such positive impact financially, socially, and from a lifestyle, mindfulness point of view. It needs to happen.
It's interesting to look at your journey with this from when we first had a conversation to where we are now, and I can see your journey of understanding, if it could be that bold.
I'm being educated right now.
And as a man who is possibly the most well-connected man I've ever known, we talk about that, don't we? That this man is so bloody well-connected. That's an opportunity, isn't it? That is, and a sense of purpose for what we're trying to achieve. We don't have to be miserable about it. We don't have to be down about it. We can be educated, we can have fun, and we can fulfill a passionate dream.
Can show frustration because it's there, but it's aligned to then, well, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And you mentioned fun. Who better than funfulness, Amy? I'm conscious of time because we could talk for a lot longer, but that is the mission, right? And let's see where we can go from this conversation onwards.
So we've talked about ADHD and we've talked about funfulness, and we've talked about your approach to all of that with your lived experience coming into changing the optics on mindfulness to be relevant to this large community of people that need help. I can't let you leave this interview without you telling me what your strapline is.
Because life is too short and I want people to be supported to enjoy it, my hashtag is grab life by the tits.
There you go.
Love it.
Could not have that unsaid.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Seen it on our socials many times and always chuckle. Yeah.
Oh, you just wait. I've got a new jacket made and it's got it on the back of it in pink.
Well done you. Brilliant. But why take life so seriously, right?
Yeah.
And this is where I think so many people have got a bit lost, and I think if we can help and influence and inspire. Yeah.
Yeah.
You do that all the time, right? And I think that's where you need to be at a higher level. It needs to be at the highest level.
I'm going back to ADHD 360 now to help me with my medication, because I was talking about it, obviously my experience at the weekend, and it took me a year to even have the conversation. They've been so patient with me, about going on the medication because I was scared and I didn't know, and I needed to learn about it and process it. And then I've tried some, and then I got a little bit overwhelmed again. But on reflection, my best year in business was 8 months was when I was on medication. So there's no coincidence there. So I need to come back and get some help.
And we're on with that, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're on with that.
Can I ask what medication ultimately is and how it actually works? So how, in context of sort of being able to look at before and after and what you're actually taking. Is it gradual? Is it instant? Is it something you really can measure?
Now I've done a lot of learning over the weekend, so
because this is something I know very little about.
There's different types of medication. So there are going to be some that are immediate, and there's going to be some that aren't. And it's all about how the brain works, and it's to do with dopamine and the dopamine receptors. So it really does depend. And I have tried a few different medications, and I haven't quite landed on it yet. But I will say that usually it's a medication that works quite quickly, and quite quickly I realised, this is what it's like to not have a chatty brain.
That's what I was wondering. I was wondering if it was a genuine gosh, I feel there's no normal. But
this is a really stupid random thing, but I picked up a sock off the floor the first day that I ever took medication that had been there for I wouldn't even like to say how long. And I picked up the sock and I texted my best friend to tell her that I picked up this sock off the floor. And it was that sort of, it seems like a silly thing, but if you see my house, it's a mess. And it's that sort of functioning that you don't realise that you haven't got until you've got it.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And I'm not even going to try and supplement that with anything from my perspective, because that's real. And night and day sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Night and day.
Yeah.
No, honestly, talking to you it's beyond an absolute joy. I hope that this episode gets to where we want it to get to, because I think you're very relatable. The youth that you bring to it is incredible.
Inspirational through being real.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys.
Thank you for having me.
But from an evolutionary point of view, these things exist for a reason, otherwise evolution would have weeded them out. So probably a better and deeper question is, why do we have ADHD? Like, what is it for?
And I'll talk about my adventures or my expeditions. I'll touch on mental health, and all the questions that come at the end of those sessions always come about mental health.